I'm Evangelist Dolores Jackson. Thank you for tuning into my channel and welcome to Light and Life Outreach Ministry. I would like to first ask you to click the like button and also the subscription button so that you will not miss out on any future videos that I'm going to post. Those of you who would like to purchase the book and or the workbook so that you can follow along, on my page there is a link called Hip Pay. You can click that link and it'll take you directly to the page where you can purchase the digital download of the book. So today I am going to start the teaching series out of my book, Healing the Hurts of Yesterday. So the object of this course is to aid in the healing of those who have been emotionally wounded. So the things that I pray that you take away from this book are the types and levels of pain, how the origin of your pain relates to ACEs, and I'll explain what ACEs is a little later on, when and where your pain began, the long-term effects of childhood pain, how to process your pain, how to face the fears of your past, and the importance of opening up and talking about your pain. So there are people all over the world who have great plans for their future. They be it a college education, a big career, a marriage, business ownership, and etc. And many have succeeded in attaining their goals, but sadly, there are many who are stuck in a place and can't understand why it is so hard for them to move forward in life. I believe it's because what people have been through have left them wounded, and they've tried to pick up the pieces and keep moving, but they haven't healed from the hurts of yesterday. If you're going through life holding on to the pain of trauma, abuse, loss, dashed hopes, and God knows what else, any hope of you leading a successful life is going to be hindered. Why? Because if you haven't healed from those things, you carry them with you every day. It is likely that you haven't forgiven those who have hurt you and closed those painful doors. And if you don't, instead of those memories being a part of your past, they will remain your present and become the reality of your future. You cannot move into the future while holding on to the past because one will cancel out the other. And if you try to, you will remain in limbo. You cannot physically be in two cities at one time, nor can you live in the past and the future at the same time. You can't have both, and nor should you want to. So I want to start off today once again talking about the heart, because I think there is a lot that people don't really know or understand about their own heart. So I want to delve into some things. And I want to start with Proverbs chapter 4 and verse 23. And I'm going to be reading from the NLT version for those who want to follow along. So Proverbs 4 and 23 says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. So the word guard means to protect or keep safe from harm or injury. So the first thing the Lord tells us to do here is to protect our heart, protect it from harm or injury. Okay. Now, the word determine means to decide. And the word course is another word for route. So if your heart determines the course of your life, if it determines the route that your life takes, then it would behoove you to adhere to this scripture and protect your heart. And we're going to find out why in just a few minutes. Now, what he's saying essentially here is protect your heart over and above everything else, because the condition of your heart will decide the route that your life takes, whether good or bad. All right. Now, let's look at what the heart is once again. The heart is where one's emotions dwell, and it is the place where one's thoughts originate. All right. Now, The heart is also the center of one's emotions, thoughts, and will. So, a thought is an idea or an opinion that is produced by thinking. And what I really want to hit on here that I didn't talk about in my previous video, Stuck in a Stagnant Place, is the will. Because we tell the Lord, Lord, I want to be in your will. We know he has a will for us. Okay? But we need to understand what the will is. The will is one's will is the faculty or the means or capability by which a person decides on and initiates an action. I'm going to say that again. It is the faculty or the means or capability by which a person decides on and initiates an action. The heart holds within it your values, your principles, your standards of behavior, and basically what you feel is important in life. All of this is wrapped up in your heart. So there's no wonder why the Lord tells us to guard our heart, because everything that our life encompasses, every decision we make, every thought we have, every action we take, your heart is the deciding factor. Your heart will decide whether you want to live or die, whether you want to commit suicide, whether you want to kill or hurt somebody else. It's the deciding factor whether you want to go to school, whether you just want to, live on other people, whether you want to, do right, whether you want to do wrong, whether you want to do evil or good. Your heart is the center of everything that you decide is going to take place in your life. Yet, we don't really protect our heart the way we're supposed to. We don't. We go into relationships, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on, but I want to hit on a little bit. One of the things that the Lord showed me when I was writing this book, or one of the things he shared with me, when you enter into a person's life, you essentially enter into their world. And whatever's going on in their world affects you. But more importantly, it affects your heart. So we're so quick to dive off into all of these different relationships with people that we don't know. I mean, and of course, you have to get to know a person if you're going to be in a relationship with them. But, you have people that's in and out of relationships, in and out, in and out, in and out, and they carry baggage from relationship to relationship. They have this baggage, this luggage that they carry around, and start out with a little piece of luggage, and then it's a medium-sized luggage, and then you got the big old container, because they're constantly collecting baggage because they're not protecting their heart. Okay, and here's another reason why it's so important. I want to show you what's in the heart. Okay, Matthew 15 verses 18 and 19 says, "But the words you speak come from the heart. That is what defiles or corrupts you." What comes out of your heart, the words that you speak, the thoughts that you have, this determines. These are the things that will corrupt you. For from the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, all sexual immorality, theft, lying, and slander. Remember, the heart is the seat of the emotions. And for every thought that you have, it stirs up an emotion and it causes a reaction. What is that reaction? The act that you take. Okay? Because you act on the thoughts that you have. If someone make you angry, what are you going to do? You're going to try to get back at them. If someone does something that you feel, and some people have felt that, they were supposed to die and they killed them. So we have to protect our hearts. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9 says, the heart is the most deceitful of all things and desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is? Only God. He is the one who tries the reins of the heart. Only God knows our hearts. We do not know our heart. We don't. Because if we knew our heart, we wouldn't flip back and forth all the time. One day we're happy. The next day we're sad. Then we're up. Then we're down. We're back and forth. We're in and out. We're all over the place. Because instead of us controlling our emotions, we allow our emotions to control us. And your heart is the seat of your emotions. Remember, 60,000 thoughts a day is what they say we have. 60,000 thoughts a day. Of those 60,000 thoughts, 45%, I'm sorry, 75% of those thoughts, or 45,000 of those thoughts, are negative, and 95% are repetitive. If 75% of your thoughts are negative, our hearts are, and yeah, we don't know our hearts. And this is Jeremiah is talking about the unregenerated heart. But even some of the people who say that they are Christians, some of whom are even filled with the Holy Spirit, still walk around thinking evil thoughts about people and doing things. Some of the meanest people that I've met were people who said they love the Lord. And I would just look at them and think to myself, well, that's not Christ-like. Because to be a Christian is to be Christ-like. And so we really, really, really have to think about what's at stake here when it comes to us and how we even treat our own hearts. You know, love starts with self. You have to first love yourself before you can expect someone else to love you. And typically, if you don't love yourself, people would know it. So how do you expect someone else to love you if you don't even love you? You have to love yourself first, and you have to love yourself enough to protect what is the controlling factor of everything that you will ever do in your life. Okay? So now, healing the hurts of yesterday simply means restoring someone who's been hurt back to a healthy or sound condition. That's it in a nutshell. Restoring someone back to a healthy or sound condition. Now, we're going to start this journey by looking at the origin of pain. And the origin of pain is the point or place where your pain and suffering begin. That's simple enough. It's the point or place where your pain or suffering begins. Now, we know that pain, the definition for pain is physical, mental, or emotional suffering. All right. And so now I want to look at some of the characteristics of pain. So the first one is pain is caused by comes from a means of chastising. God chastises us. He said, I chastise those whom I love. I don't know about you guys, but every time I got chastised when I was a kid, and especially when I get chastised by God, it hurts. Now, I was the kind of kid, I didn't like being whooped. I didn't. My mother told me to go and get a switch one time. That was it. That was the first and last time I got whooped with a switch. I thought she had lost her mind. I was about maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I went and found the smallest switch I could find. Bad move. I might as well have went and got a whip. But I never got another switch whooping. And when my father, it was 8 of us at home at one time, and when he lined us up to get our whooping, I was at the end of the line. Yep, I was that child. And I cried real hard. And a lot of times I got out of my whooping because he had mercy on me and let me out. But there were times that I didn't. But I was one of the best children my parents had because I didn't like whoopings. I didn't like pain. Chastisement. That is one of the characters. That's one of the things that the Lord uses. Pain. See, what I have found out about God, He will let the world whoop you. He'll let the world whoop you right back in shape. He won't keep talking. I tell people all the time, the Holy Spirit is like our mother. He'll talk to you and he'll talk to you and he'll talk to you and he'll talk to you. And when the Holy Spirit gets tired of talking to you, He's going to tell the Father. The Father doesn't talk. He chastises. He's going to chastise you. And it's going to be painful. And He's not going to have to put His hands on you. He will allow the situation that you're in to whoop you. He'll allow that thing that He told you not to do to whoop you. He will allow that relationship that He told you not to go into to whoop you. The very thing that you're trying to hold on to, He will use it to kick you out the door, which is exactly where He wants you, because He knows that the place that you're in or the situation that you're in and the relationship that you're in is not healthy for you, but you don't want to listen. So, another characteristic of pain is that it affects the whole person. It affects your mind, your heart, and your body. So, have you ever had a stomach ache? Have you ever had a headache? When your stomach hurts, it affects your entire body. When you have a headache, it definitely affects your entire body. Hit your foot real hard and see what happens. You're going to, even though the pain is not in your stomach, you're going to double over. And the first thing you're going to do is sit down, and it's going, because that messes you up when you hit that baby toe. Yes, it does. So pain affects the whole person. It affects when your heart is hurting. It affects all of you. It affects all of you. It affects your mind and your body all at the same time. All at the same time. Now, the third thing is that pain is common to all mankind. All of us have felt pain to some degree, whether you're a little kid or an adult, whether it be physical or emotional pain. All pain is common to all of us. Now, just as there are different types of pain, such as the physical, mental, and emotional, there are different levels of pain. And so those levels of pain, the first one is acute pain. Acute pain is associated with short-term severe illness, but can be quite devastating. Okay, you ever had a toothache? It's short-lived, but it's severe. That's acute pain. And you can have surgery, and it can affect you in a very severe manner, but it doesn't take a long time for that healing to take place in your body. So that is acute pain. Chronic pain is associated with long-term illness and can be very persistent and devastating. Example of chronic pain can come from cancer or any long-term illness that you may have, something that it takes, a years and years for you to be healed from, if there is a cure. So mental suffering, depending on the severity of it and the length of it, it can also lead to mental diseases, such as, once again, bipolar, depression, or schizophrenia. Now, this type of pain can have a great effect on you because, unlike physical pain, mental pain is more than just a surface pain. Physical pain is a surface pain, but mental pain is totally different. And it's not easy to escape. Why? Because it is in your mind. Now, this type of pain requires a totally different type of medicine. It requires some counseling and sometimes hospitalization. Now, when you're dealing with extreme pain, whether it is acute or chronic, it can affect you mentally and be even more devastating because once again, it is trapped in your mind. It's trapped in your mind. And until you heal mentally, it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. Now, though mental illness doesn't cause physical pain, they do cause the stress and will not only ruin your life, but will also make you a prisoner of your own mind. So the example that I would give, um, when my mother passed away, I had I was already having a lot of pain in my body. I mean, it was rough, and it was because of something that the doctors diagnosed me with. They call it cervical dystonia. It showed up in my life when I was about 15 years old, and what it does is it causes uh, involuntary muscle spasms. And so I had a pinched nerve in my left arm, and in this same arm, I was having muscle spasms. So as the muscle spasm fired up, so did the nerve. Now, the pain was so severe that I had to learn how to think happy thoughts because um, stress caused the pain to be even worse. So I couldn't let anyone get me upset. Couldn't argue any of that. I just had to learn how to think happy thoughts because that's how much pain I was in. So when my mother passed, when she went home to be with the Lord, the combination of the physical pain and the emotional pain that I suffered sent me spiraling into a depression. Not only did it spiral me into a depression, it also caused my sleep clock to shut down. That was fun. Yeah. For 30 days, I did not sleep. My sleep clock literally shut down. The doctor said my third eye, my third eye was still awoke. And in order for them to get that to shut down and to get my sleep clock to turn back on, they had to give me some medicine. So it doesn't cause physical pain, but it can cause you to be a prisoner in your own mind. Now, depression is a mental health disorder that's characterized by persistently depressed mood or loss of interest in activities. It affects your thinking and behavior, causing significant impairment in daily life. It is a deep, dark hole. And I'm sure there's someone that's listening to me right now. You have dealt with depression. You know, it's a black hole that you never want to fall into. And, it's not easy to come out of. It's not an easy place to come out of. No matter how much people minister to you, that's something that literally only God can really help you with that. It's a bad place to be. And I'm just grateful to the Lord you know, that I did have a relationship with him at that time and that I was able to come out from that dark place. So now emotional illness can ruin relationships. It can cause difficulty in concentrating and solving simple everyday problems. It also causes feelings of guilt, worthlessness, and thoughts of suicide. Now, there is a lot of different reasons why we go through emotional pain. There's a lot of different reasons why all of this stuff comes about. And I think it's safe for me to say that for the most part, it happened to those of us who had a dysfunctional home. Okay. So I want to talk about the dysfunction of the family because many of us grew up in dysfunctional homes. A whole lot of us grew up in dysfunctional homes. Okay. Now, a dysfunctional home is a place in which one may experience mental, sexual, physical, and verbal abuse, lack, divorce or separation, and instability. Now, instability is the utilities always being shut off. There's a constant threat of eviction, a lack of finances. Okay. Now, it can also be an environment where there is alcoholism, drug abuse, and where children witness the physical and mental abuse of one or both parents, and also where other family members have been known to accept and accommodate such actions. Imagine that. Because, when we were kids, our parents disciplined us, but we didn't have anybody to run to. And a lot of children, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself in this message, in this lesson, but I just feel like I need to talk about this for a minute, because I grew up in the '60s, and in the '60s and probably the '70s, or definitely the '60s and before that time, there was no laws put in place to keep children from being abused. And a lot of children were abused. They were physically abused. They were mentally abused. I have cousins that were beaten with extension cords. They were beaten with ironing cords. They were beaten with shoes, whatever the parent could get their hands on. Now, thankfully, my parents, they didn't go beyond the belt. They didn't do all that stuff. They didn't mentally abuse us. They disciplined us. They whooped our butts. But, we all turned out okay. But that's not the case for some children. They were literally abused, and they had no one to go to. They had no one to turn to. And then you had other family members that knew about it. They covered it, because those types of things weren't talked about back then. They weren't talked about. Now, pain and brokenness can begin in adulthood, but for many people, it began in childhood. It began when they were first introduced to negative situations such as, once again, abuse and abandonment, negative environments such as their neighborhood, especially nowadays. God forbid you live in gang territory, or you live in an area where there's constant break-ins and, just drug infested and just dangerous. There's areas, there were neighborhoods that my daughter lived in with my grandchildren that I literally wanted to cry. I mean, she lived on this one street in the city of Detroit where there was literally maybe only 3 or 4 houses on the whole block. And I'm looking outside at these fields full of grass and crap, and then there was this one house on the other side of the street. They were always partying, always out on the street, rowdy. And I'm thinking to myself, Lord, I have got to get my babies out of here. All of that stuff has an effect on you as a child. So negative environments such as your neighborhood, your home, or even the school that you go to. Some of the schools out there, they called Murray Wright Murder Right. Imagine your high school is called Murder Right. My ex-husband's nephew got shot in the head in the hallway. Yep, Chester Jackson. That was his name. He got shot in the head in the hall in school at Murray Wright. In fact, him and my mentor went to school together. They were friends. And he was there when my nephew got shot in the head. So, it can happen in school as well. And unfortunately, like when you have things like that take place in schools in the better neighborhoods, they bring in the social workers or whatever, and they help the children. But we didn't get that, and don't get that still in the schools in the African American neighborhoods. And so the third place that it happens, through negative relationships with siblings, negative relationships with parents or other relatives and friends. And now, so there is this program that I want to talk about, and I'm not 100% sure when this program began, but the program is called ACEs, and it's spelled ACE, and so now I want to talk about what ACE is, because I told you guys we were going to talk about this. So now ACE is an acronym for Adverse Childhood Experiences. Okay. Now each traumatic event that one encounters is an ACE. Okay. So they have finally come to a conclusion. This is amazing. that everything that we went through growing up is the reason why people wound up in prison, why people are promiscuous, why people, murder people, why they drop out of school, why kids run away from home. Well, we already knew this. We could have told them this, but somebody needed a payday, so let them tell it. They just figured out that this is why people have so many negative things take place in their lives. So ACEs, let's talk about what ACEs are in totality. ACEs are potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood from ages 0 to 17. Okay. It includes various aspects of the environment in which a child grows up, including those that were previously mentioned, and is widely recognized as having a direct correlation or connection with how an individual's life turns out. Okay. So you tell me, if trauma, if mental pain and suffering, if the things that is going on in our heart has not had an effect on our lives. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. These types of environments threaten to eliminate a child's sense of safety, stability, and bonding, and growing up, and such things as growing up around substance abuse, mental health issues, absent parents, lack of food, homelessness, unstable housing, discrimination, and etc. I don't think there's a person that's looking at me right now that haven't dealt with one of these things that I just mentioned right here. Okay. Um, ACEs affect a child's developing brain. Their brains are damaged so profoundly that the effects of what they go through in many cases as a child in these types of environments show up decades later. People have developed social issues, behavioral problems, and have flunked out of school. Many have become depressed, developed other mental diseases, and have violent tendencies, have become incarcerated, try to commit suicide, and etc. When I first found out about this study, I was really, I was kind of shocked, but then I was kind of happy that I found out about it, because I actually had to revise my book, because when I found this, I was like, wow, this encompasses everything that my book talks about, and it was really like the missing key that I was looking for when I first wrote this book, or should I say the finishing touch that I needed. And so, although many types of childhood trauma exist, there are 10 specific types that have been measured in the ACE study. Now, 5 of them are related, are personal, and 5 are related to other members of the family. So the first 5 are in the category of personal trauma. And that trauma, once again, includes physical, verbal, and sexual abuse, and then physical and emotional neglect. Okay. Now, I want to look at the psychological abuse, because it is also referred to as a psychological violence, mental abuse, or emotional abuse, and is characterized by a person subjecting or exposing another person to behavior that may result in psychological trauma, such as anxiety, chronic depression, or even post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, as I said before, many people years ago, these types of childhood experiences were shrugged off. They were shrugged off and basically ignored. But being subjected to this type of behavior results in psychological trauma. You know, um, so the second five are in the category of family related trauma. And family related trauma can be brought on by having a parent who's an alcoholic, a mother who's a victim of domestic violence, a family member who's been incarcerated, one that's been diagnosed with a mental illness, and even an absent parent due to divorce, death, or abandonment. And also, there is that family member who attempts suicide or dies from suicide. Now, I came from an environment where my father was an alcoholic and he abused my mother. I watched him abuse my mom for almost, well, I would say the first episode that I can remember is probably when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, all the way up until I was 18, you know. Um, and I'm gonna give another telltale in one of the chapters in my book because I think this is very important, and I just have to bring things out even as the Lord put it on my heart. The one of the things that he said to me when he had me writing this book, he said, you know, when people do things to hurt you, because of the pain that you are experiencing, that's what you focus on. You focus on the pain that you're in. That's all you can focus on because you're hurting. He said, but you never consider what the person that hurt you went through, that caused them to do what they did. And I was like, wow, that's kind of deep. He said, hurting people hurt people. And so the first person that I thought about was my father. And I was like, wow, Lord, I never gave thought to what he went through as a black young child growing up in the South. I never gave thought to what he went through as a black young man growing up in the South, or what he went through as a black adult man living in the North during a time of such prejudice and discrimination. I never thought about it. I didn't think about what happened to him, even maybe in his home when he was growing up. They caused him to drink later on in life and, become the abusive person that he was. I never thought about it, but it is so true. And we don't. Come on, you don't. None of us do, really. We don't. Because when you're in the midst of pain, when you're hurting, when you're suffering, all you can think about is what you're going through. Because that's first person self-preservation. That's what we think about. We never consider what that person went through. We get angry. We retaliate. The last thing that most of us ever think to do is pray for that person. The last thing most of us ever think to do is sit down and have a conversation with that person and find out what they went through when they were growing up, what they went through in their life, whether it be it as a child or an adult, that caused them to act the way they act. And it's really something to think about. It's really something to think about because domestic violence happens more often than we care to think about. And typically, whatever type of environment the person grows up in, if you grow up in the home of an abuser, then you'll become an abuser, most likely. You grow up in the home of an alcoholic, most likely you'll become an alcoholic. Children mimic those types of things. It has that type of effect on a person, especially when they're young and impressionable, because that's the norm for them. It's what they see on a regular basis. We saw our father do this on a very, 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 very regular basis. I had a couple of sisters. When they started dating, they would beat their boyfriends up. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have common sense, but I have enough common sense to know that if you hit somebody, they gonna hit you back. So I never did that. But yeah, they would beat their boyfriends up. I guess in their minds it was like, I'm gonna get you before you get me, and that's the way a lot of people think. They do. Now, ACEs have been linked to a lot of different issues, such as mental illness. Excuse me one second, I apologize. Mental illness, erroneous lifestyles such as stealing and murder, wrong thought patterns such as people have these thoughts. Well, I suck at everything. Well, nobody can tell me what to do. Risky health behaviors such as prostitution, lifelong health conditions such as pancreatitis from drinking alcohol. It causes low life potential, such as low self-esteem, and also short lifespans. Because you have people who get involved in gang life, they try to commit suicide, they have substance abuse problems, and this happens in adolescence and in adulthood. You have a lot of teenagers that are alcoholics. They start out drinking because all they want to do is get rid of the pain. They just want to get rid of the pain. So they either going to do the drugs or they're going to drink. And you have more teenagers that drink and that are alcoholics than you realize. They're out. They are. They may steal their parents' alcohol, or they'll have somebody go to the store and buy it for them, but they're going to get it one way or another. Because that's what they just want the pain to go away. And it's just a sad place to be. So these outcomes will increase for individuals with higher ACE scores, or a higher number of negative childhood experiences. However, the fact that ACEs have been a part of a person's life does not mean they have to have a grievous adulthood. It doesn't mean that they have to become promiscuous. Doesn't mean that they have to commit murder. Doesn't mean that they have to drop out of high school. They could go in a whole nother direction. Because once again, me and my siblings, we lived in that type of environment. But we didn't grow up and go south. We didn't go to jail. We didn't do all that stuff. Thank God. You know, and a lot of more people did not, but more people did than those who did not. Now, how big is the ACEs problem? ACEs is very common. So about 64% of U.S. adults have reported that they experienced at least one ACE before age 18. And 1 in 16 adults or experience 4 or more. 4 or more. Okay. Now, preventing ACEs could potentially reduce many health conditions such as heart disease and depression. Some people are at a greater risk, and these are linked to historical, social, and economic environments where some people live, such as the gang violence and those types of things that I talked about earlier. ACEs are costly. The health-related consequences of ACEs cost an estimated, are you ready for this? $748 billion annually in the Bermuda, in Canada, and in the US. For $748 billion. ACEs and associated social determinants of health, such as living in under-resourced or segregated neighborhoods, can cause toxic stress, which is extended or prolonged stress. And this can negatively affect a child's immune system and stress response systems, therefore affecting their attention span, decision making, and learning ability. The mind is very fragile and must be protected. So we can't just protect the heart, we have to protect the mind too, because remember, 60,000 thoughts a day. That's where your thoughts are stored. They're stored in your mind. And so we have to protect, the mind is fragile. Imagine, for every thought, see, because we have these mental notes, right, that we take and then we store them in the storehouse of our mind. And during the day, because we have 60,000 thoughts a day, most likely we don't just take one mental note down and look at it and put it back. No, we take them down, we look at one, we take another mental thought note down, we look at it, we take another down, and before you know it, you have about 100 mental notes in front of you. You have all these thoughts now going through your mind. Now you have all these different emotions stirring up, because remember, for every thought that you entertain in your mind, that you pull out of that storehouse, it causes an emotion to arise and stir up. So we have to protect our mind too. We have to protect what we see and what we hear and what we take in to hear. And in doing that, we protect our mind. I don't believe that it has to necessarily be that we have 45,000 negative thoughts every day. I don't believe that that has to be. Not if we protect our hearts. If we protect our heart, like the Lord tell us to, we won't have 45,000 negative thoughts. Now, we may not be able to do a whole lot about the repetitive thoughts, because as I said in the last video, we're repetitive creatures. We're creatures of habit. We do the same things, a lot of the same things every day. So because we do a lot of the same things every day, we think a lot of the same thoughts every day. I use the example about going to work. You get up in the morning, you have the same thoughts. Got to brush my teeth, got to wash up, got to get something to eat, got to get on the road. What is the conditions of the road? What you have to do on your job, and all of that. And so because we have all these thoughts stored in our mind, right? And we may want to eliminate the unhealthy thoughts that resulted from these experiences, but it's not easy to do, because all of the good thoughts and the negative thoughts are mixed in together. There is not a separate storage room in your mind for negative thoughts and positive thoughts. They're all in there and they're all linked together. You can't separate them. You can't eliminate, you can't dump out all the negative thoughts. You can't do it, you know? So, and because there's a lot of thoughts that we want to retain. Now, as a note, I have here, the mind not only generates thoughts, feelings, ideas, and perceptions, but it also, once again, it records and stores the memories that consist of data that we've accumulated throughout the entire existence of our life. And like I said in the other video, in other words, everything we've ever done, thought, observed, experienced, or perceived have been recorded, and things that we thought we had forgotten are still stored in our mind. So even if you could get rid of everything, things that you want to hold on to, or things that you don't even think, the things you don't even think you remember, it's still in your mind. So many people are stuck in their childhood because they haven't been able to move past the point of the ace or the aces that devastated them. It is said that if a child grows up in a home of an alcoholic, as I said before, there's a chance that they too will become an alcoholic. And if they live in a home of an abuser, then they will become an abuser. This is the type of influence that is known as suggestive thoughts, which are ideas or images that are formed in the mind because of something that is said or done. There's a lot of people who are silently hurting because of what they had to endure, and because they suffer in silence because they're too afraid to let anyone know what happened to them. So they go through life suffering alone. A lot of people are afraid to talk about what happened to them because they're embarrassed. A lot are afraid to talk about it because they don't feel like they can trust people. They may have shared something at one point and the person that they shared it with betrayed their trust. A lot of people, men in particular, I think so. A lot of times for them is that man thing, that ego, can't let nobody know I went through this. But no, you were a kid. most of us, and a lot of times we didn't have any control over what happened to us. It was nothing that you did, and it was nothing that you could control. So, you know, many people will never share their painful experiences, once again, because of shame, because of trust issues, and others don't understand how to process what they've experienced. Um, and so they become frustrated with talking about it, and they hold it in. And it's never good to hold pain in. And so I'm going to end this lesson by saying this. Until you are able to understand where your pain began, you will never be able to sort through your issues and heal. And without healing, many people will die on the inside long before their physical body ever does. You don't want to be a dead man walking. You don't want to be a dead woman walking. You don't want to die on the inside before your physical body dies. You want to live. So I'm going to end it here, and I will see you guys with lesson number 2, with part 2. We're going to go through this, and I just pray to God. I believe, and I'm going to be praying for everyone that's going to be watching these videos and listening to these lessons. I'm going to believe God with you, that He is going to heal you, that this is going to help you, and you're going to heal, and you're going to move from that place of stagnation, that you're going to walk in freedom at the end of this lesson, this series. And so God bless you all. Have a great day. See you next time.